news of the day is, of course, this big New York Times report that back in June of 2017, President Trump tried to fire Robert Mueller. So according to Mueller, I looked it up. It's Mueller. Okay, I've been getting it wrong for months. It's Mueller. Okay, so Robert Mueller is, of course, the special investigator who was appointed in June 2017 after President Trump fired James Comey, and then after he used Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein in the process of doing it, forcing Rosenstein to recuse himself in the Trump-Russia collusion investigation and turn the whole thing over to a special investigator. Jeff Sessions did not protect Trump because he'd recused himself. Rosenstein didn't protect Trump because he had to recuse himself because of the Comey firing. And now it looks as though Mueller, as I've been saying for at least several weeks, is moving from collusion to obstruction. Now, the problem with the obstruction of justice case is that in order to actually say that somebody has obstructed justice, you actually need to fulfill one of three laws. And I've gone through the three laws a couple of times, explaining what exactly these three laws mean, because there are three different statutes. But let's go through them again, because I think that we need to have this clear in our mind. When people say that some sort of criminal activity went forward or that Robert Mueller is going to get Trump, there's two ways to get Trump. One is to hit him so hard politically the Democrats have a reason to impeach. And the other is to actually suggest criminal obstruction of justice. As I say, there are three types of obstruction of justice under the U.S. law. 18 U.S. Code 1503. I'm going through this background again. We did it a little earlier this week, but I think it's important. The Omnibus Clause covers corruptly or by any threatening letter or communication influencing or impeding or endeavoring to influence, obstruct, or impede the due administration of justice. So the clause requires a pending judicial proceeding. So that means that Trump would presume, like an FBI investigation isn't enough. It would be him trying to bribe a prosecutor or something. The Supreme Court is pretty exacting on the application of the law. The prosecutor would actually need to prove that Trump's conduct materially impeded the investigation. Even James Comey said when he was fired afterward that Trump did not materially impede the investigation. So if it is true that Trump tried to fire Robert Mueller, the special investigator, then that still is not materially impeding the investigation. So this part of the code is probably not being fulfilled. Then there is 18 U.S. Code 1512C. This provision of law covers anyone who obstructs, influences, or impedes an official proceeding or attempts to do so. So there are a few questions about this. One, is an FBI investigation an official proceeding? Two, you actually have to prove criminal intent. You have to prove that Trump wanted to impede the investigation. Now, this would be the area of the code where Trump would be in the most trouble. But you also have to show that you took a substantial step toward the accomplishment of that goal, toward an accomplishment of an attempt to obstruct justice. I'm not sure that that's fulfillable because, again, even if Trump wanted to fire Mueller, and even if you think that would constitute obstruction, he withdrew that. He didn't actually fire Mueller. And when he fired Comey, he had every right to do that. You can fire your FBI director for any reason whatsoever. So the idea that that is technical obstruction of justice is pretty weak. It would be very difficult to convict Trump in a court of law, but in the court of public opinion, there is a different problem, right? So here is the story from the New York Times. With all that in mind, with the fact that there is a section of the U.S. Code that theoretically might be applied against Trump, maybe, although you'd have to explain why it is that he doesn't have the executive authority just to fire Mueller or fire Comey for any reason at all. Obstruction of justice, by the way, by a president would look not like him firing somebody and then letting the investigation continue. It would look more like him going to Robert Mueller and saying, you will find me innocent or I will fire you, right? Those are the two choices. You will find me innocent or I will fire you. That would be obstruction of justice. For him just to say, I don't like this investigation, it bothers me, you're fired. Not quite sure that that is obstruction of justice, particularly if the investigation continues afterward. Anyway, the New York Times broke this story. So they say back in June 2017, as it became clear that Special Counsel Robert Mueller was looking for a pattern of possible obstruction of justice in Trump's behavior, Trump ordered Mueller fired. He only retracted the order when White House counsel Don McGahn threatened to quit. So according to the Times report, Trump said that Mueller had a bunch of different conflicts of interest. And you can tell that this report is probably true because of what Trump said was the conflict of interest. Conflict of interest number one, according to Trump, was that Mueller had resigned his membership at the Trump National Golf Club in Sterling, Virginia years ago over a dispute over membership fees. That is not a conflict of interest. Okay, that's silly. Second, Trump said Mueller could not be impartial because his law firm had represented Trump's son-in-law, Jared Kushner. Again, that is not really a thing, right? Law firms represent lots of people. If Mueller didn't work on that case, it probably wouldn't matter. So, and plus, if you're talking conflicts of interest, Trump was interviewing Mueller as a possible FBI director before Mueller took the special counsel job. Finally, Trump said Mueller had been up for the FBI director position before he was appointed special counsel. It's unclear why that would actually be a conflict of interest. Okay, fine. So the Times reports, after receiving the president's order to fire Mueller, the White House counsel, Don McGahn, refused to ask the Justice Department to dismiss the special counsel, saying he would quit instead. They spoke on the condition of anonymity because they did not want to be identified discussing a continued investigation. McGahn disagreed with the president's case and told senior White House officials that firing Mueller would have a catastrophic effect on Mr. Trump's presidency. Mr. McGahn also told White House officials that Mr. Trump would not follow through on the dismissal on his own. The president then backed off. That, of course, was true. Trump has been threatening to fire Sessions for over a year, has not fired him. Trump has been threatening to fire, he's threatened to fire McGahn before. He's threatened to fire everybody. But the truth is that Trump really doesn't fire anyone. Mike Flynn resigned. He wasn't actually fired. So why does this matter? Number one, it's not what the left cracks it up to be. So he didn't actually fire Mueller. If he had fired Mueller, then we'd be talking about obstruction of justice. It would look like the Saturday Night Massacre. The Saturday Night Massacre, going all the way back to 1973 with Watergate, is when there was a special investigator, Archibald Cox, who was called in to look at Watergate, and Trump asked his attorney general to fire Archibald Cox. The attorney general refused, and so Trump fired the attorney general. Sorry, Nixon, yes. This would be Nixon back in 1973. So obviously that's not happening here. He didn't fire Mueller. He didn't fire his attorney general. He didn't fire Rosenstein. He didn't fire Sessions. He hasn't fired anybody, right? So, but here's what Mueller is going to do. He's going to put together the following fact, and he's going to say, or he could say, that this is an attempt to obstruct justice, that Trump is attempting to skew the investigation. So here are all the things Trump has done. And they're equally explicable by stupidity. As always, I tend to believe the Trump is being an idiot, not Trump is being nefarious story, because I think that mostly Trump is being an idiot, not nefarious. So here are all the things Trump has done. First, he fired National Security Advisor Mike Flynn. Trump implied that was prompted by Flynn lying to the FBI. Then he reportedly asked FBI Director Comey to lay off of Flynn. Now, if he asked him to lay off of Flynn knowing that he had already lied to the FBI, is that obstruction of justice? Not clearly, because he obviously didn't take any measures against Comey from February all the way until May, right? And Comey continued to go after Flynn. The president then fired Comey and acknowledged publicly it had to do with the Russia investigation, but he was saying at the time that it wasn't because he wanted to stop the investigation, it's because he is innocent and Comey wouldn't say openly that he was innocent. Okay, the president then had a continuous stream of invective against Attorney General Jeff Sessions for accusing himself on Russia again. Is that obstruction of justice? Not really. The president attacked Deputy Attorney General Rosenstein, attacked Deputy FBI Director Andrew McCabe, and now the president's apparent attempt to fire Mueller. Now, none of this amounts to legal obstruction, probably. As I say, and as Alan Dershowitz has said, the president is the head of the executive branch. The investigation has not been quieted in any way. So whatever attempts were happening, it's hard to prove attempt when there was no actual impeding of the investigation. So that is point number one when it comes to this Mueller stuff. But it's going to be used as the left as evidence that Trump actually wanted to shut down the investigation, and then he was unable to do it. And then he failed in doing so. But if he had had his druthers, he would have. That's going to be part of this broader suggestion by the left that Trump is trying to obstruct justice, even if there's no hard proof that Trump is trying to obstruct justice. And the more plausible case is that Trump is just pissed. These people won't say he's innocent, and so he's mouthing off a lot, which I've been saying for months is my read on the situation. Okay, so in just a second on what's going on in the Mueller investigation, there are a couple of pieces of breaking news that are quite crazy with regard to the Mueller investigation. A lot of coincidences piling up with regard to the Mueller investigation, how it was conducted. So you recall, a lot of them come down to this one guy, Peter Strzok. It's spelled S-T-R-Z-O-K. I have no idea how to pronounce this, so I'll just pronounce it I'll just pronounce it differently every time, make fun of his name. In any case, this guy is an FBI agent. He was having an affair with another FBI agent named Lisa Page. They were both working on the Trump-Russia probe. So we know that Strzok was involved in the Hillary Clinton email investigation. We know he had been involved in launching the Trump investigation, and we know that he was staffed on it as well. Now, we also know that Strzok texted Page on August 15, 2016 regarding Trump. Quote, "I want to believe the path you threw out for consideration in Deputy FBI Director Andrew McCabe's office that there's no way he gets elected, but I'm afraid we can't take that risk. It's like an insurance policy in the unlikely event you die before you're 40, which makes it sound a lot like the Trump collusion investigation could be a way of stopping Trump's candidacy, right? It's an insurance policy against stopping Trump from becoming president. Now we learned that Strzok and Page sent each other messages suggesting they knew before the FBI had reported to then Attorney General Loretta Lynch that Clinton was going to be exonerated. On July 1st, 2016, you recall Obama Attorney General Loretta Lynch announced she'd do whatever FBI Director Comey told her to do. That announcement followed a tarmac meeting in Arizona between Loretta Lynch and Bill Clinton. That day, Strzok texted Page, quote, "Timing looks like hell." Page responded, "It's a real profile in courage since she knows that no charges will be brought." She's not supposed to know no charges will be brought, right? The FBI was not supposed to be telling the DOJ what their judgment on this case was until the judgment was out. But apparently Comey and the rest of the FBI had been regularly informing the Obama DOJ that Hillary would not be prosecuted, which is super corrupt. And the coincidences don't stop there. Hey, this is a crazy story. This is the most insane coincidence of all. So, something like 400 pages of text messages between FBI agents have been delivered to the Senate Oversight Committee. Senator Ron Johnson of Wisconsin, he announced on Monday that the FBI had somehow failed to deliver months of text between Strzok and Page. Text beginning December 14th, 2016, ending May 17th, 2017. What happened that day? That's the exact day that Mueller was appointed to head the investigation. So in other words, all texts before Mueller took over the investigation from December to May were deleted. The FBI says they were lost in a technical glitch. How do you lose just the text that we need? How's that you lose precisely the texts that determine the shaping of that Russia collusion investigation? During that period of time, you had Trump's inauguration, all of the activity with Mike Flynn, Mike Flynn's firing, the Manafort, I believe the Manafort investigation ran into high gear, the firing of James Comey. Right? All of this stuff was happening in that time, and we have none of the texts between Strzok and Carter Page. None of them? So Representative Jordan has called for a second special counsel to investigate the first special counsel now. He tweeted out earlier today that it was time for some sort of investigation. At first, the IRS destroyed emails pivotal to our investigation of their political targeting. Now the FBI, quote unquote, failed to preserve text between Peter Strzok and Lisa Page following the 2016 election. The time is for a second special counsel is now. Well, yes, I believe that it is. I believe that it is. I mean, just for the sake of my own peace of mind and for the sake of the peace of mind of the American people, there's a lot of suspicion of this investigation now. There would have been anyway, but that suspicion is really high, particularly after the so-called memo that people want released that was supposed to shed light on how the FISA warrant was originally garnered from the Obama administration to check out Carter Page. And now you have all these deleted FBI texts, and you have these texts between Strzok and Page, and Lisa Page, no relation to Carter, suggesting that there was a sort of conspiracy afoot in all of this. It's all insane. I mean, how was this investigation run this badly? Now, Mueller wasn't there for all of this, right? He fired Lisa Page and he fired Peter Strzok upon taking the office. That has nothing to do with Mueller, but you have sort of a fruit of the poisonous tree thing going on. Now, in law, there's something called fruit of the poisonous tree. Basically, the idea is that if I break into your house illegally, I'm the police. I break into your house illegally, and I find evidence that you murdered someone. I can't use that evidence in court because it's fruit of the poisonous tree, because I broke the law in order to obtain the evidence. Well, the same thing sort of holds true with regard to this investigation. If the investigation was launched on the basis that there was a Democratic Oppo research file from Fusion GPS that was used for political reasons by the FBI to target Carter Page and therefore the Trump campaign, and if it turns out that separate from that, the FBI was exonerating Hillary Clinton for political reasons at the same time they were investigating Trump, and if it turns out that separate from that, there are members of the FBI who are texting each other that the Trump collusion investigation was actually a way to prevent Trump from becoming president. And if after that, it turns out that the FBI purposefully deleted months of texts between two of their key agents in all of this, I think the American people have a right to know, and the American people might have some serious questions. All of this calls into serious question our faith in our institutions. It was our lack of faith. This is deeply troubling to me. The lack of faith in our institutions that already exists is deep and abiding. It's a serious, serious problem. Right? The lack of faith in our institutions is what led to the rise of Donald Trump. It's what led to, it's frankly what's led to the growth of government, because people, instead of looking at the institutions and figuring those institutions are corrupt, take all the power away from them, instead they say, well, if we just had a guy who will break all the rules and use the power of those institutions to reinstall virtue, everything will be great. Unfortunately, the human tendency is not toward liberty when it comes to misuse of institutions. It's toward the belief that those institutions can be corrected if they have the proper leadership. The founders disagreed, but that's unfortunately how most people think. None of this is good, right? You want institutions that are worthy of our trust. Right now, I'm not sure the FBI is completely worthy of our trust if what we're hearing is true. The Obama DOJ certainly was not worthy of our trust. And for all the flack that Jeff Sessions has gotten, Jeff Sessions' DOJ has operated much more along the lines of law than the Obama DOJ has. I mean, you literally had the sitting Attorney General of the United States calling himself the President of the United States' wingman. Right? That is not exactly what we want from the head of the DOJ and the chief law enforcement officer in the country. All these institutions now need a thorough cleansing, top to bottom. They all need to feel clean to the American people. I don't know if Trump is capable of doing that, by the way. It may be left up to the next president, because Trump is so politicized, because his presidency is so despised by so many. Anything he does is not going to be seen as cleaning house, except by members of his base and maybe some Republicans. But that said, Another oversight investigation of this investigation may be necessary. The Mueller investigation itself may be fatally flawed at this point. We'll have to see what comes out from it. Democrats are hoping there's a kill shot in there. If there is no kill shot, then this is going to be seen, I think, half rightly, as Trump says, as one of the greater political witch hunts in modern American political history. If nothing major comes out of this and went on for a year, and it was Democrats in the media propping up this nonsense, then there's going to be hell to pay. There will be political hell to pay. And Democrats will have made a huge, huge mistake, one that in its inception goes back again, as always, to Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama.
We will make America great again.